What's going on, Fantasy Alarm Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with Ryan Hallam, and this is another edition of Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. Hallam, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good, man. Halfway through the week. 4th of July weekend coming. Lots of fun. Hopefully everyone's responsible and safe and has a good time. But another great day here in New York, and really excited to talk some sports with you for a little while.
Yes, well, you know what starts right after the 4th of July? The Scott Fish Bowl. We both got our T-shirts on. Thanks to our guy, Scott Fish. We are both in the Scott Fish Bowl. And Ryan, I think this is a good place to start because a lot of analysts in our space are going to be hashtagging SFBX for Scott Fish Bowl 10 and talking about this wild and wacky league. And we want to make sure that everybody knows what exactly we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think it's like 1,240 people or something, or analysts and fans. It goes for charity to FantasyCares.net. So it's not only just football and fantasy football. It's a way for everyone to come together. The community, especially on Twitter, everyone just follows each other, and there's lots of great conversation. It's all positivity. And then, of course, the charity aspect, which helps out a lot of kids. And this year I see a lot of people donating to, charities that are near and dear to them, which is also great. And then, of course, the fantasy football, which is the fun part.
Right. Fantasy Cares, Scott Fish's charity. He's Mr. Humanitarian. That's what it is. And that's what it's about. And for all of you that are in it, whether or not you're a fan that got in or an analyst, yes, you don't have to necessarily pay technically to go in, but buy the shirt. That's what it's all about. It is for charity. And these shirts are so cool anyway. Lego. You ever watch Lego Masters? It's a Fox show.
I have not. No.
Were you a Lego guy at all when you were a kid?
Not really. I was more of a G.I. Joe guy. I also got the Transformers shirt, wrestling guys and things like that. I had Legos. Of course, everyone had the big laundry basket full, but
right.
They weren't like crazy as they are now. Like now I see my kids, those little those little things are like $14 now. Like, Jesus, I feel like we got like 3,000 Legos for that when I was a kid.
Yes, it's like back in the day when you were a kid, gas was only a dime for a gallon. Like that back then, Ryan. Seriously.
I mean, I'm not as old as Howard, but
True. Back when I was a kid, it was around 80, 90 cents at that time. So the stock of gas was certainly going up, and that price point was. But let's talk about the league and some unique factors regarding this league, because again, people are going to be tweeting out their drafts. You're going to see this a lot, and we have to tell everyone, Ryan, what kind of league this is. This is a super flex league. So for those that may not be familiar, and if you're not, you haven't been listening to any of our content, you could draft a quarterback and start that quarterback in your flex. So it's essentially could be a 2-quarterback league, a 2-quarterback starting, but not exactly where you're starting 2 quarterbacks, but it gives you the option to start a second quarterback if you so choose. And here's the big one, Ryan, because in this league, it really gives a bonus to the tight end position as well, because for receiving, and the scoring is just really, really high. You get like 6 points for rushing touchdown like you normally get. When you get the reception, you get the 6 points receiving touchdown, 1 point for every 10 yards there. Yeah, and you got the 2-point conversion there. You get some for that. It's a half-point PPR. But in addition to that, the tight end position, an extra half a point per first down and an extra half a point per reception. That changes the game, especially when it comes to draft strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly gives the tight end an extra advantage, especially the top two with Kelsey and Kittle. Huge reception guys, both really relied upon by their quarterbacks for first downs, like a lot of tight ends are. The tight end is always the great safety net on 3rd and 4 to go over the middle and pick up that first down. So it certainly brings the tight end into a lot more focus in this league, and not just the top 2, but some others as well.
Ryan, let me ask you this here. Where are you picking in the Scott Fish Bowl?
I have 10th overall pick.
Okay, so interesting. So we're on opposite sides here because I have 3rd overall. So this is very interesting because I've already been asked questions about that. What do you do with it? Do you go after a quarterback? Do you go after even a tight end like a Travis Kelce at that point? But Ryan, I'm still thinking I'm going to be getting Zeke here just so I can get one cornerstone running back. What do you think of that?
I don't know. I've been having a lot of conversations with people about this. I feel like if you get the first pick, I still feel like McCaffrey is probably the way. But there's also bonuses for quarterbacks for completions.
Right.
So there's also minus for incompletions and an extra negative for interceptions and another extra negative if the interceptions return for a touchdown. So the quarterback scoring is very complicated. It's tough because most drafts that we do are really running back heavy. We're going to talk about another one a little before we're done. There was like 12, running backs taken out of the first 14 picks. I think this one might be a little bit different. As personally at 10, obviously I'm not going to get Zeke, but I really think one of my first 2 picks is definitely going to be a quarterback, whether it's first or second. I have to see how the 8 picks before me go. I do one of those eliminators, and if you're familiar with those, right. It's a satellite off the fishbowl, and I'm doing the draft now, and I waited around too long on quarterback, and now I have Ben Roethlisberger and Justin Herbert. That's all I've got in a super flex league. So you're going to have a hard time being third because you're going to set the tone. But you got to see what your draft is doing. Right. To kind of. I don't normally suggest that do what others are doing, but in this one, this fishbowl drafts are just completely different because so many people go into it with so many different ideas that you really never know what's going to happen in front of you.
It's almost like the double whammy because not only do we have to worry about early quarterback runs, but an early tight end run as well. And part of the thing with fantasy is while you're reading the room, you have to know when to not overpay. And once you got Kittle and Kelsey off the board, then you have a big decision to make with what you're going to do. Are you going to go after Ertz or Andrews? Or after that, maybe Waller goes shortly after that. And then I feel like once those guys go, you could wait after that. And then but you can't wait too long because you really do want to get one of those tight ends that gives you that bonus. Quarterback, I'm a little bit more concerned with because that Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are going to go very, very early. They're likely to go in the first round. You might have to take one of the 2 in the first round. And that could start a run. People get paranoid, and I'm going to have to make a big decision when it gets back to me for my second round pick. But Ryan, if my mentality, I'm still feeling like I'm going to stand pat. I'm not going to get Mahomes. I'm not going to get Lamar Jackson. So I think I'm still going to try to wait out quarterback as much as possible.
Yeah, I think you're going to be in a position where when it comes back to you in the second round, there's still going to be some quality quarterbacks. Because the quarterback position is fairly deep. So, in other years, there was 4 or 5 good ones. There's probably 13 to 14 where you could feel pretty comfortable with them being your number 1. And then even super flex, you're most of the time you're not going to have 2 studs. You're going to have one really good guy and then like I don't know, Ryan Tannehill or guy along the Garoppolo kind of guy. I mean, very few teams are going to have 2 good ones. So I think you can wait and get one in round 2 or 3.
What if I waited maybe until round 4 or 5, got someone like Russell Wilson, and then a few rounds later picked up Daniel Jones? Daniel Jones has a very tough first part of his schedule, very tough first 5 weeks. That way, if Russell Wilson, let's just say, isn't doing as well, or I could just use Daniel Jones as a stopgap for my flex, and I don't have to start him those first 5 weeks, and then all of a sudden when week 6 hits or all the other weeks after that, then I can start utilizing him a little bit more.
You can, but I will tell you right now, if Russell Wilson is around in the 4th round, I will make a video on Twitter of saying how incredible you are, because I don't see that happen. I think quarterbacks are going to go faster than you think they're going to. I think you might end up with Daniel Jones in the 3rd round as opposed to Wilson.
I don't know, man. You really think that Daniel Jones, you really think there's going to be that big of a quarterback run early?
I think 10 will go in the first 2 or 3 rounds. Yeah.
Wow.
Based on experience, yeah. I think you're going to see Mahomes go number 1 overall in a lot of these leagues. I won't be surprised if he goes 1 overall in 20 different leagues.
Yeah, last year I took Breeze and Brady, and that didn't work out very well for me because I lost Breeze early. Yeah. That was a big problem there. So it was a lot of Tom Brady. And I was able to wait it out a little bit, Ryan. I'm telling you, we might have to make some kind of side wager to see how long Russell Wilson lasts in our respective leagues that we're in. But that's the very interesting part, Ryan. Like you said, you have to read the room. And I don't want to just go in there with a strategy that I am waiting until no earlier than the 6th round because I don't want to end up with 2 shoddy quarterbacks.
Yeah, you will if you wait that long. And I'm telling you, I just think, and there are a lot of good ones, but especially with these interception, penalties and these incompletion penalties. I mean, you got to, even like Baker Mayfield threw 21 interceptions last year. That's almost minus 100 points in this league, and I'm sure a couple of them went back for touchdowns. So for all the pluses for quarterbacks, there are some minuses. So the cream of the crop is certainly going to do better for you than the middle tier and the bottom. So you want to take care of that position.
Maybe I end up with Joe Burrow as my QB2.
And the funny thing is, you don't have to start 2. So of course the super flex is nice,
Right.
but if you get a guy like Mayfield, who last year was throwing away a lot of his points, you might be better off starting a wide receiver. Wide receiver's very deep. You're going to get a lot of good guys there. So sometimes it's not smart. Sometimes it's not smart to force that second quarterback just because you're in a super flex league. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It just gives you the opportunity to do so.
I am almost hoping that a quarterback goes in the first 2 picks of my draft. That way I could grab Saquon and not have to go Zeke. So I can grab Saquon, be happy with it, really then wait on that running back position and then focus on where my draft is heading compared to my other league mates. That's what it's going to be. And, when you're in a league with your friends from home, you know their tendencies. You know who they root for. I don't know anybody in my league. I'm actually in a league with Shane Battier.
Nice.
NBA player. And he's picking right after me. I have no idea what players he likes. I have zero clue. So it's going to be very difficult. And that's why I've advised everyone with my guy, John and Pemba on the Alarm After Hours show on Sirius XM. I said, hey, what you need to do is you need to know your opponent. You need to keep a notepad or some kind of note in your phone. And you need to start asking those little questions where no one will suspect you that you'll be asking them, wait, was he trying to find my draft strategy? But hey, in the month and a half leading up to your draft, you can write in notes about your league mates. You can ask them little questions. Well, what player are you going to bid up in the auction? You can get all that information. You just can't be stupid and obvious about it.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, is to try to glean anything. A lot of these leagues have, DM groups on Twitter. If you get and try to, get little needles of what you might be able to get out of somebody. And a lot of it is watching the draft. Like both of us are near the turn. You have to see when you pick third, when you come back and you're 9, you have 2 people after you. Look at their roster and see what they have and what you think they might not do when you make your first of 2 picks around the wheel. I think that's really important too. Is what you need to do with that first pick and what you can wait to do with that second pick is sometimes critically important.
Yes, and you did mention something, speaking of critically important. It is a slow draft, and that's the key. But just because it's a slow draft doesn't mean you can take your sweet old time every single pick. We got to get this draft done. Please, if anything, quarantine, I want to draft right now. I'm going to be more motivated to get my pick in quick. But Ryan, I made this mistake in a draft that I was in last year, which was run on a Google Doc. So I didn't really have a player pool in front of me. And I messed up my pick so badly where I thought Dalvin Cook was taken. He wasn't taken. I went Tyreek Hill, and it screwed up my entire draft only because I didn't want to be that guy that holds up the draft. So we're not saying, hey, you need to pick in 5 seconds. Just don't wait 5 hours to make every single pick.
Yeah, I tend to get some draft anger. Some people, if they take too long, I'm like, and there's always, and I feel bad saying this. This is my 3rd fishbowl. And you get some people, it's their first one. And last year I remember I was in one and they were like, I want this experience to last as long as possible. I'm like, how is no picks an experience? I don't understand it. I mean, yeah, you don't have to be on top of it every second. But and then there was another guy who's like, oh, I'm waiting all 8 hours in case news breaks. You've got to be kidding me. Like, just make your pick. So yeah, there's timeliness, and then there's let's see. I don't even know a polite way to say just rude to the rest of the room.
Yeah, if you want an experience, go to a Blink-182 concert. Great experience. This is a draft that we want to get done. So don't be that person that's average pick time is about 8-10 hours. Don't be that person in any slow draft. Just don't be that person, but make sure you're also not the first person that's all of a sudden like, I'm just going to pick. I don't want to be that guy, because then you're going to miss out on some players. Every pick is just so important, especially at the beginning. Let's go back to tight ends though, Ryan, because if I do decide to wait on tight ends, who are some of the guys that you're looking at late where maybe I can get some good value on tight ends, even if I want to double tap the position, let's just say in round 7 and 8?
I think there's a number of good ones. I know one that we all in Fantasy Alarm talk about a lot is Hayden Hurst in Atlanta. Austin Hooper's obviously out of town. Obviously, Matt Ryan and the offense likes to go to the tight end. And, he never really got the opportunity in Baltimore with some injuries, and then Mark Andrews, broke out, so it didn't really happen there. He's definitely one guy that I think his ADP is just going to keep going up like the closer we get to August. So, like, drafts now, he might be a little bit of a bargain, but I think that's going to go away fairly soon. I like Jared Cook in New Orleans is another one.
Thank you. He's like the forgotten guy. I see him dropping like crazy, and when I say crazy, I'm not going to go too crazy, but I've seen him drop a round or two, And I just don't understand why Drew Brees has proven himself.
Yeah, I don't get that one at all. It's a passing offense. He's got some after the catch skills as well. He's not this plodding guy who goes over the middle and then falls down when he catches it. Like he can run once he gets it if he gets it in space. So he's another one that, yeah, you're right. I've seen him drop way more than where he was drafted last year. I don't get that one. What about you? Who are a couple of guys you like?
I mean, you mentioned Hayden Hurst. I mean, Jared Cook was someone. What about Jack Doyle? Jack Doyle is someone, and I was in an fantasy alarm auction over the weekend with some of our subscribers and some of our staff. And of course, James Grande does this. James Grande, I was side chatting him the whole time. I'm like, you stupid person. I said something a lot more not nice than that, let's just say. I was just like, you stupid. I can't believe you just put Doyle up there at this point. Now he's not going to go for $1. He's going to go for $2, $3. And I was almost in dollar days at that point, and I couldn't go after him. But short passes from Phillip Rivers to him and no more Ebron. I mean, come on, man. I mean, that is a good dollar value quarterback. I'm a tight end. I'm going to say this. I will have him as my starting tight end if I don't go after a Darren Waller or Mark Andrews, let's just say.
Yeah, I think he's due for a good season. Like you said, he's had some competition there over the past few years. And then last year, Jacoby Brissett is nice, but he's limited as a quarterback. And Phillip Rivers, all right, he threw 300 interceptions last year. I mean, the guy's got a long history in the NFL, a long, very successful career. He didn't just forget how to play last year. He's ran for his life every play. And I think with a good offensive line with the Colts, I think that he's going to be better, and I think that only helps Jack Doyle.
Where do you stand on some of the other guys that you could draft late, like a Mike Gesicki or a Noah Fant or even a TJ Hawkinson?
There's so many of these good young tight ends that just haven't quite broken out yet, but have a world of talent. I love them all. I would feel good with any of those three guys. Gesicki, obviously, in limited time last year, he's had some trouble staying healthy, but he's another one, very athletic. After he catches the ball, he can do a lot with it. Noah Fant, I think, has only started to scratch the surface of his potential. Now, hopefully, Drew Lock will take the next step. I mean, look, he had Joe Flacco and all kinds of other garbage thrown in the ball last year. Now it appears he has a real NFL quarterback throwing in the ball. So I really like him. And Hawkinson, he missed most of last year due to injury, but that dude definitely showed some skills. He's got a great vertical leap. He's also, a real athletic guy. He's real physical. I don't know that a safety, he's like a good jump ball guy on top of everything else. So it's awesome in the red zone. I don't know if he's going to get a ton of receptions, but I think he's going to do a lot with it with his first down bonus and the touchdowns. I think Hawkinson, again, assuming health, can be very good.
Now, towards the end of the season, the Eagles lost just about every single receiver to injury. So all of a sudden you saw Dallas Goedert have a little bit of standalone value. Now going into this year, we don't know what to make of Alshon Jeffrey at this point. They drafted Jalen Reagor. Does Dallas Goedert, in your opinion, have any standalone value going into this year? Absolutely.
I think he does. I think he's going to cut into Ertz's time. I think it's going to take Ertz out of that. I don't think he's in that top three discussion anymore because of the emergence of Dallas Goedert. And I think that they're both going to get a lot because, like I said, the Eagles don't have a lot of good wide receivers. They brought in a couple. I mean, we'll see what Reagor can do. Marquise Goodwin, not a huge fan there. Alshon Jeffrey, God knows when he's going to come back.
I mean, they do have Deshaun Jackson back, who, by the way, I'll buy that for $1. As
absolutely.
The Barber Show did.
Absolutely. Assuming he can stay healthy, which, I like the guy. And he showed what he did in his very little time last year. He had a huge game right before he went out for the season. But, I mean, Dallas Goedert and Deshaun Jackson aren't getting the same balls thrown to him. So, but I think they're going to focus on the tight end a lot. So I think there's going to be enough balls to go around for both those guys. So, yeah, I take Goddard as a starting.
What about – here's one I don't like, and I just don't have really good vibes. Austin Hooper. You can't go by what you saw last year. And now you mentioned Hayden Hurst in that spot in Atlanta. Now Austin Hooper in Cleveland. I just don't know what to expect at this point when it comes to the Browns offense. I mean, a lot of people think that Baker Mayfield is going to improve. And even our fantasy alarm team as well. You saw what they did in the football futures draft, which we previewed on this very show last week. They went in not only on the over on Baker Mayfield touchdown passes, but the over on the Odell Beckham Jr. touchdown receptions.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect. And there's there's a lot to unpack there, and a lot of it is personalities. There's a lot of personalities on that team. There's a lot of guys who I feel read their own headlines. There's a lot of guys who need the ball to feel, feel their value, and of course, a lot of that I'm saying Odell Beckham, but. It was bad last year. It was really bad. Mayfield made horrible choices. He put the ball in jeopardy constantly. Part of it was he was running for his life. I mean, they brought in Jack Conklin, one of the best linemen, in free agency. They drafted a tackle early, so their line should be better. They bring in Austin Hooper. It just there's an embarrassment of riches of an offense there. I mean, they should do good. If they don't, it's going to be one of the colossal failures. Okay, they got rid of their head coach. He was trash. They brought in a new guy, the guy they almost hired last time. So all signs are there for the Browns, but I'm like you. I am really hesitant to take any of them. I love Hooper. It took me a couple of years to come around to him in Atlanta, but once I did, I came around in a big way. But I'm struggling to use him as a starter myself.
Yeah, I'm not going after him either. One member of the Cleveland Browns, though, that's very intriguing, and that's because of his draft value. And once we hit August, his ADP is going to go up, at least in my opinion. Kareem Hunt, because he's going to be used more as a receiver going into this year, not facing that suspension like last year. And yes, they can feed Nick Chubb the rock as much as they want, but I love it. If I'm sitting there in the 5th round and he's there and I really am light on running backs, why the hell not as my RB2?
Not as big of a fan as you are, but I definitely see in a PPR league, yeah, it's going to make sense. It's not like he's going to sit for sure. He's going to have a role. He's going to probably get 6 or 7 targets a game. I feel like he's going to be touchdown dependent. I feel like he's going to have to score for you to have like a really successful week. I mean, if he comes up with 4 or 5 catches, 40 yards and maybe runs for 20, that's 10 points. It's not bad. But I'm really excited for him for 2021 because I think he'll be out of Cleveland then, or Nick Chubb will be out of Cleveland. I think he's going to find his own way the following year. So dynasty folks, get on the Nick Chubb while people are still thinking he's in a committee, because I think after this year, I think he's going to find his own way.
You heard it from Hallam. Get on the Chubb. Let's move on to your FSGA American Conference draft, Hallam, because I thought you did a great job. We brought you on the Alarm After Hours show on Sirius XM. You probably thought Ronas and I were going to dice you up, but no, we really loved your draft, and I did especially. I was so proud of you, and you have a very well-balanced team. The one player that I have to ask you about that I'm intrigued by, because I'm just so confused. I don't know what to expect from David Montgomery. What are your expectations? He's your RB2.
Well, he had a pretty terrible year. Everything went bad for the Bears, and he still had just under 900 yards. So I expect everything to be a little bit better. I expect him to utilize him a little more. I expect him to throw the ball a little more to him. I expect him to actually break a couple tackles this year. I mean, he was good in college. I don't know what happened where he just kind of didn't do well at all. And as bad as he was, and as much as everyone crapped on him, 900 yards, that's not the worst thing in the world. He was a rookie. This will be his 2nd year in the league, so hopefully everything slows down for him a little bit. I feel like he's going to get a lot better, and I don't feel like he's in a committee. Obviously, Cohen is there, but Cohen's not there to run the ball. Cohen's there to catch the ball, and there's nobody else really behind Montgomery to get carries, where other guys that were drafted right after him, I felt had a little more competition for carries.
Yes, and speaking of carries and the running back position in your particular draft, there were a lot of running backs that went in the 1st round. We've been talking this show about reading your draft room, and you actually being in the spot was very, very lucky, Hallam, because you didn't have to deal with the stressors that the people in your league on the other side had to deal with, whether or not to take a running back or not, how to prioritize the position. You got Saquon Barkley, but then after that, you saw Zeke, Kamara, Cook, Mixon, and then after that, we finally had Michael Thomas go, Miles Sanders, Henry, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, dude. Okay, I get it. Andy Reid loves his running backs. I get it. He was a 1st-round pick in the NFL draft. He rounded out the 1st round. I get that. But in the 1st round, we got to pump the brakes, I feel like, regarding this guy.
10th overall, I thought was ridiculous. Hopefully the person drafting isn't watching. I doubt they are.
No. Let me stop you right there. I'm going to stop you right there. Hopefully that person is watching, because you know what? They're going to have some work to do, and they're going to need the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Football Draft Guide to do it. If you go to fantasyalarm.com/NFL Draft Guide, 1997, then you won't draft a team like his, and you'll get all of our content and learn how to manage a team if you've had a bad draft. But that's the thing. We want to teach people to win. If you don't want to be made fun of regarding your team, you don't want to be critiqued, go play intramurals. Don't be in these industry fantasy leagues that the grid has tweeted out all over the place. I'm serious. I'm so glad you brought that up. You just hit my buzzer if this were a game of operation of my body. I'll tell you that, Hallam. But going back to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, first round, I lost more hair, if that's even possible, when I saw that pick.
Yeah, I mean, we also preach get your guy. But you got to get your guy with some reason. Like Edwards-Helaire's ADP is like around 33 to 35, not 10th overall. You're going to pick twice again before his ADP comes around. So yeah, get your guy with some real realistic goals here. You could have easily taken him in the second round. There was no way in the next 7 picks he was going to go. And by ADP you could have got him in the third round. So yeah, go get your guy. But Jesus, pay a little bit of attention. That one blew my mind. It really did. I couldn't believe Edwards-Helaire in the first round. Get your guy, but be smart about it.
And this team clearly was paranoid when they saw all those running backs going that they thought they were going to have to load up. And that's the problem, Hallam. And I talk about this with Ronis all the time. Everybody is going to hold a grudge to last season when the waiver wire was bare with running backs. But that's not how it is every season. That's how it was last season. It sucked. I spent $78, $78 on Ty Johnson, the most I've ever spent in my fantasy football career. If I have $100 of fab, the most I've ever spent on a player, Ty Johnson. And it stunk for me. Other guys, J.D. McKissick, Brian Hill, did not work out. So I think people are holding a vengeance from last year being like, I'm not going to be put in that position. It's one thing if you have awareness of stuff like that. It's another, like the team we keep harping on that took Clyde Edwards-Helaire 10th overall, took 4 running backs in their first 5 picks. And then I don't know if they realize it's a 3 wide receiver start league.
Yeah, that whole team kind of had a lot of question marks. So in the first 4 rounds, they took 2 rookies and then Darius Geis, who I don't think has played 5 games in the league yet. So you've gone 2 rookies and the most injury-prone running back you could possibly choose. And then their second receiver was Brandon Cooks, who has about 76 concussions. And then Hunter Henry, who's broken his foot, torn his ACL, lacerated his kidney. Matthew Stafford is the quarterback who broke his back last year. So it's like, this team was like going for the most injured team possible, I suppose. If that was what they were going for, then they won this draft. Because
look, they got Justin Jefferson. Yeah, you're starting him as your 3rd wide receiver in a pandemic where everything's virtual right now. No reps, no chemistry. Yikes. And again, we're talking about this specific team because we want to raise that awareness. That's not how you build a team. And you can't just fear a position. We were just talking about that in the Scott Fishbowl, Superflex, and tight end bonus. Yes, there's a point where I'm going to have to realize if I'm reading the room and I'm seeing everyone fly off the board, and like Hallam's saying that whether or not a bunch of quarterbacks are going to go or a bunch of tight ends are going to go in the first 3 rounds, I'm going to have to adjust on the fly. That's why I write out my tiers. And it changes. And this is what's important, Hallam, knowing your scoring system. We went over the Scott Fishbowl. How many of the 1,200 people do you think will actually read the rules that don't know it regarding the Scott Fish? I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to give my prediction under 50%.
Oh, definitely. 100%. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's what you got to know your scoring system. You got to know your league rules. It's not necessarily up to the commissioner to be shoving it in your face, especially if the rules haven't changed. Now, if the rules have changed, that's a totally different story. We could talk about that on another stream as we get closer to the season, how to be a good commissioner. But the whole point of this discussion is you can't fear a position. 4 running backs in 5 rounds, and especially 3 risky running backs at this point. 2 rookies, like you were saying, Hallam, Geis, who's injury prone at this point, I'm saying, he can play, he could be fine, and that's great, but it hasn't been the case thus far. If I end up with a receiving core, Cooper Kupp, who I'm not even actively targeting, Brandon Cooks, you mentioned the concussions, Sammy Watkins, Justin Jefferson, I will start crying.
Yeah. What I like to do, I started doing this in fantasy baseball, but I'm bringing it over to fantasy football, is especially quarterback and tight end. I like to set a floor. I'm like, okay, I want my starter to be no worse than this guy. and be like, okay, this is who it is. Say it's Josh Allen. Say it's whoever you rank 10th, let's just say Carson Wentz. In my draft, if they're getting to the point where Carson Wentz, for example, is about to be drafted, then I know I better move. If your floor tight end is Evan Engram or Hunter Henry or one of these guys, and it's getting close, then you got to move. You might have a plan to say, oh, I'm going to wait this long for this, or I'm going to wait this long for this position. You don't ever know what anyone else is going to do. And the fishbowl, 100%, because there's so many people. There's always those people out there who are trying to be the most creative because they think I've got to beat 1,200 people. I've got to be different. That to me, these drafts are the craziest drafts. But that goes to all drafts. I don't like to necessarily answer runs or adjust because of it, but sometimes you have to. You have to look at who's available, who's left, how many picks you have left, or how many guys are until you pick again. And sometimes you do. You have to adjust your strategy.
Who's your bottom line quarterback? Your floor, essentially.
Probably Daniel Jones. I think I still feel okay with him as my starter. I don't want Aaron Rodgers. That's one guy that a lot of people feel good with that I don't feel good with. But I'm good with Daniel Jones. I don't think anyone would go lower than that in like a 12-team league. Matthew Stafford, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, I'm okay with. Obviously, Kyler Murray and those guys up. But Breeze, I don't even know if I'm okay with Brady. He's got a lot of good weapons. I didn't like what I saw with the arm strength last year, so we'll see if he can get it down there. He'd probably be maybe Breeze. Maybe Brady's my last.
What about Roethlisberger?
I don't. I'm so torn on him. Because I like the team. I like, he almost never misses time. Of course, he just missed all last year. But coming off the Tommy John does scare me a little bit. For him to be my starter, I would absolutely take another quarterback shortly after that I felt pretty decent about, like a Drew Lock or a guy like that, or maybe Mayfield even. I've been crapping on this whole stream. Someone else that I feel like I'm not dead if he goes out, because I like Roethlisberger. I like the weapons. I like the offense. But his durability at this point, at almost 40, scares me.
What about Gardner Minshew? We're just going to see him start on a few of these FSGA teams.
I don't know where in the world this is coming from, Fency. I really don't. I mean, the guys are. I love the mustache. I love the moxie. As like a character, I think he's great. But I watched him play last year. He's okay. I mean, he had a few really good games. He had a lot of nice games. He had a lot of just not good fantasy games. I feel like he's a much better quarterback than he is fantasy quarterback. Let's not forget, he was benched for Nick Foles, and I know the Jaguars paid Nick Foles a lot of money, but at that point in the season, if Minshew was that much better, I think the Jags would have been just let Foles, sit the rest of the year. He'd already missed most of the year. So I don't get the Minshew love for starting fantasy quarterback, number 2 in a super draft. All right, I'm okay with that. I think he's going to throw 20 touchdowns. He runs a little bit. He gives you a little extra value. Right. But these people starting him, I just don't get it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I get he has Chark. I get that. But for me, I'd say my floor is, Daniel Jones is there. I'll get a share of Big Ben, I'm sure. That's it. I mean, I'm fine with Breeze. Brady, I'm very undecided on at this point. But if I end up with him, I won't be that upset, especially in the fishbowl. Still got something left. That's why Tampa's paying him all that money. So I firmly believe that. But that's about it. Outside of that, when it comes to my personal QB1. But yeah, I'm watching Daniel Jones. But like we pointed out, and a bunch of us on staff pointed out, very tough start to the schedule. So you're going to have to understand that if you have Daniel Jones. What's good about the Giants situation, as we pointed out before on shows, Ryan, is that we haven't really seen them healthy with Daniel Jones, all the weapons. That's the big thing going into this year. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and he I think he ran for about 200 yards last year, but he's very mobile, and I think he's going to improve on that this year. It doesn't necessarily, two-step, 3-step drop and run. But if he doesn't like what he sees, he can definitely move with the ball, and he's athletic when he gets in open space too. So he's going to give you, I'd say, 350, 400 rushing yards this year.
Yeah, speaking of mobile, he is Ryan Hallam, Mr. Mobile himself, especially when it comes to getting a move on brackets at Fighting Chance. Random bracket serials, so you can vote on those right now on Twitter. For me, at Fensty Sports, you can catch me on Alarm After Hours on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, Sirius 210, XM 87. Most nights, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern, but tonight, Wednesday, 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern. For Hallam, I'm Fensty. Let's all dominate together. Why is that? Because there isn't any other option.